And I am your worship leader today. We welcome you to Parkrose Community United Church of Christ, and Pastor Don is on vacation today, and we have with us Bruce Bishop from the First Congregational Church and Don Hayemi from the Lake Oswego Church. So we welcome you all, and as we say on Sunday, we give honor to the first people and their ancestors and the land we are, that we now use. And please join me as we say every Sunday, wherever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. And if you'd like to stand as you are able, and we'll sing our first song, Sing of Colors.
So usually you're going to mute the mic for whoever's standing up there, so if they want to sing along, it doesn't broadcast. You can kind of see that this is kind of a bad angle. It's usually picking up the person that's right there. So I'll just go wide. And then just pan. Give people, you know, a view of what's going on. Let me go say hi. Oh, we don't pick up everything we're saying. Everything we're saying is that's why I don't say.
Maybe
All right, let us continue. And as we please join me in our centering song for prayer.
There's a picture here. What's that make me think of when you see it? I believe it. Is this on? There we go. Enjoy that.
That's the one, like,
Yeah. Okay. What do you think? When you see that picture? Okay, somebody working on our art project? Okay. I'd like to see all the beautiful, wonderful colors. That little cup of pencils, too. That's kind of what I think of. Okay, so what is the same and different about us? What is the same and or different about us? What do we have in common?
I did.
What don't we have in common? What's different about us? We're all humans. We all have different personalities. You guys are way too smart for this question. Okay, well imagine we're baking a cake. What does it take to make a cake? Egg. Okay, sugar. Now, does flour by itself taste like a cake? And I'm not going to ask you about sugar because it does taste pretty good by itself. But what about eggs? Do they taste like a cake by itself? No. So I want you to kind of think about the blending and mixing of all of those wonderful ingredients to make something that's really awesome called cake. And it's kind of like, we can equate that to that cup of pencils, having all these differences, blending colors, creating new things with that. So I want you to think about that when we think about community, our neighborhoods, and our families, about how and celebrate our differences and our cultures. We've got different religions. Just, we have to celebrate that. And us. We're all human. That's right, man. Well, no, we have a little bit of everybody in here. Everybody is welcome. That's what we say as UCCers, right? Okay. All right. Well, let's say a little prayer, and then if you want to go back and do a craft with me, cool beans. You're going to see them. And I just wanted to show this last picture, which I feel like is really representative to different cultures, different religions, different foods, heritages, that kind of thing. So, anyway, thank you, Heavenly Creator, for the time to sit here and discuss what it means to be different and to celebrate those differences. And we pray that we kind of take this message throughout into the week and into our lives. Thank you so much. In Jesus' name.
Morning. The Immigrant Welcoming Core Team has been presenting information that we learned during the Lenten study with Pastor Don and in our own studies over the last couple of months. As we've been investigating becoming an immigrant welcoming church, it's clear that we're not exactly sure what that means either. We've provided tools and information to learn about immigration and discern what Parkrose might do. And so this is the last of that series of Now Testaments. Not like we're never going to talk about it again, but just the last of this time. The title of this slide is, What Part of Legal Immigration Don't You Understand? And this is mostly illegible. There are paper copies on the money changers table, but I don't know if that's going to help much because it's still pretty confusing. A recent post by an immigration attorney named Matt Cameron can be summarized by saying that if your family came to the United States before 1965, there wasn't a line, you didn't necessarily even have to have a visa. And not until 1997 was the current system of restriction put in place, unless, of course, you came from some continents like Asia or Africa or some other continents. And of course, that's always different. So, mostly to say, this is not simple.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yes.
Now you can remain seated while we Sing our next song, You Have Come Down to the Lake Shore. Julia to come up for the words of tradition.
Good morning. Good morning. So today we are fortunate to have with us, as Lucy mentioned, Bruce Bishop and Dawn Hayami. Bruce is from Portland First, and Dawn is from Lake Oswego, both immigrant welcoming churches. So they are here today to talk to us about what it was like for them when they were at this stage of their process, sharing wisdom for us as we go through our process. Bruce has been very active in this process of immigrant welcoming for many years, and he's very active in Washington County as a legal observer for the UCL system and with organizations that are actively working toward immigrant welcoming. So they bring lots of wisdom for us here this morning. I thank you, and I welcome Bruce and Dawn. Oh, the scripture. I got so excited, I forgot. So that was my fabulous, wonderful introduction on hold. This is the eagerness is there.
Is that the beginning of scripture?
Thank you.
She's done.
Words from tradition. 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verses 8 through 15 in the New Revised Standard Version. I do not say this as a command, but I'm testing the genuineness of your love against the earnestness of others. For you know the generous act of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, so that by his poverty you might become rich. And in this matter, I'm giving my advice. It's appropriate for you who began last year, not only to do something, but even to desire to do something. Now finish doing it, so that your earnestness may be matched by completing it according to your means. For the eagerness is there. The gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one does not have. I do not mean that there should be relief for others and pressure on you, but it's a question of fair balance between your present abundance and their need, so that their abundance may be for your need, in order that there may be a fair balance. And it is written, as it is written. The one who had much did not have too much, and the one who had little did not have too little. Amen. And now, Bruce and Dawn.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you all for allowing me to be here this morning. It's a real privilege to be here and to talk to you about immigrant welcoming. I particularly appreciate the welcome on the reader board. I don't often get billing like that, and I took a picture of it for my mom. Who will particularly appreciate it. She just turned 97 last week. And she's a member of the Community Church of Sebastopol in California. So that's where she's been for a number of years. Don and I both appreciate your invitation to be here. And we hope our experiences will help to light your way. I took the topic from Ike and Tina Turner's ballad, What's Love Got to Do with It, and replaced love with immigrant welcoming. I think there are lots of places where love could be used to replace other words that we're using today. When did Portland first start our journey to become immigrant welcoming? There are two answers to the question. One started just a year ago when I announced to our congregation during worship on August 3rd that we were going to formally declare ourselves to be immigrant welcoming. This came as a surprise because nobody had hardly even known what it meant or heard the phrase. In fact, I had just learned of it from our conference minister, Linda Jaramillo. Within 6 months, we unanimously approved a written declaration of being immigrant welcoming. In that time, we held a series of church forums learning about immigrant justice issues, formed a committee to prepare our draft, and presented it to the congregation. Not only did our draft get unanimous approval, nobody even tweaked the language, which is kind of unusual in our church. Last October, there were 5 immigrant welcoming congregations in the Central Pacific Conference. That included Riverside in Hood River, White Salmon, Bethel in Washington, Bridgeport, Hillsborough, Lake Oswego. In addition, Ainsworth UCC and Clackamas UCC had both declared themselves sanctuary churches probably 12 or more years ago. Today, there are nearly twice as many, with Portland First, Cedar Hills, Vancouver, Kairos, Milwaukee, and Corvallis becoming immigrant welcoming within the last several months. Other congregations are moving along too, including Ashland, Bend Richmond, Bend Redmond, and Parkrose. Thank you for joining us on that journey. It's definitely a growing movement. It's a homegrown one too. 3 years ago, the Central Pacific Conference formally adopted a resolution declaring itself an immigrant welcoming conference and urging local churches to do so as well. That declaration was sponsored by 2 UCC ministers, Linda Jaramillo, now our conference minister, and Elizabeth Durant. So you might be wondering if both the UCC nationally and the Central Pacific Conference regionally have already declared themselves immigrant welcoming, why do we need to do that locally? I guess the easiest answer is, first, that's not the way the UCC works. We may be united, but we're not uniform. And it's also important, I think, that we declare the status so that our communities know that we're immigrant welcoming. You may remember my saying that there were 2 answers to the question, when did we start being immigrant welcoming? Here's the second one. Late in 2015, 10 of us from Portland First visited the borderlands south of Tucson. We volunteered with the Green Valley Sahuarita Samaritans, a volunteer group co-founded by the local UCC church, and their mantra is, humanitarian aid is never a crime. That's aspirational, however, not reality. People are being held criminally liable today for giving water, food, and first aid in the desert. It's happening. Being with the Samaritans in the desert is eye-opening. It's life-changing. Just walking in that desert makes you appreciate how dangerous it is. Everything that lives or grows there seems designed to hurt you. Do you know what a jumping cholla is? It's a cactus ball, and when you walk past it, it jumps on you. Imagine what it's like to cross the desert at night, by moonlight if you're lucky, in unfamiliar, unmarked territory, striving to avoid detection and to keep up with your group, when you're hungry, thirsty, blistered, scraped, and exhausted. Imagine caring for 1 or more children while you're doing it. Imagine carrying enough water for a 4 or 5 day hike. It can't be done, and water in the desert is generally hazardous to human health and life. There are literally hundreds of people crossing the border every day in Arizona, more in California and Texas. Too many don't make it through alive. We've all seen those pictures. When we visited the Sonora Desert 4 years ago, the typical border crosser was a young, generally healthy, unaccompanied male crossing to seek work. We served breakfast and distributed clothing and supplies to about 70 recent deportees. Today, they are serving meals in 3 to 4 shifts to 4 times as many people, mostly women who are seeking asylum and their children. Today, the nuns and priests, like they did then, tell their guests, do not cross the border. It's too dangerous. Few follow the advice because they have no choice. At the end of October, we came back to Portland, charged up, ready to do just about anything, and we stumbled. Action plans dissolved, life interfered, an election happened, you might have noticed. The world changed, and we were high-centered at Portland First. That was our reality for nearly 3 years, and I hope you're better than we were in that regard. Last week, lawyers who were responsible for securing the release from federal prison in Sheridan of over 120 asylum seekers, that's Sheridan, Oregon, pointed out that the border crisis is not the result of unchangeable natural causes. They urged us to imagine an immigration system that's welcoming, not wall-building. One that doesn't kill people escaping poverty and crime, that doesn't corral people inhumanely, or separate family members, or instill widespread fear in our communities. Perhaps the most important lesson we've learned is that when we are called to welcome immigrants, we can't ask them to wait until our governance policies run their course. We won't shut the door when they knock. The second lesson is that we're all in this together, and that we will be stronger and more successful if we work together as the United Church of Christ. One little note. Right now, today, we are urgently looking for a sponsor for a family. A mother of 3 small children who's living in a shelter in Tucson. She needs a new place to live by a week from Tuesday. Is there any place in the Portland area for her? So what's immigrant welcoming got to do with it? We're still working on answering that question at Portland First, and I'm glad you are too. I hope our paths cross again soon as we welcome immigrants in Portland, and I look forward to talking with you after worship about what we can be doing. Now for the bright side of the presentation, let me welcome Don to the
I think Bruce was referring to my attire as opposed to my intellect. Bruce, that was very good. Bruce invited me to share the podium with him, not so much I think out of shyness, but to provide another perspective from another United Church of Christ congregation. And I did this without consulting with Bruce much, so fortunately I think ours will fit together pretty well. So when I think about when this started for us, there are many places that I could think of, but the one that stands out in my mind is the 2016 presidential campaign. We just became totally concerned and upset about the anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim rhetoric during the campaign. And since 2017, since the beginning of 2017, we engaged in education and discernment toward becoming an immigrant welcoming congregation. We had learned about that through the racial justice group led by Reverend Duran. It was also very consistent with a listening project that we had done early in 2017. We trained basically a quarter of our congregation to listen, and then we listened to everyone in the congregation. And that resulted in 3 goals. Ground us in our progressive faith, strengthen relationships within our community, and reach out to our community and world. So this was very consistent with what we had heard from the congregation, very loudly, I might add, and very completely. So we followed the UCC guide, The Journey is Made by Walking. It's I hope you've seen it. If not, I'm happy to point it out to you, but it's a very good guide that I think was written by a congregation in the Southwest. And we engaged in a series of educational efforts in our discernment toward becoming an immigrant welcoming congregation. These things may sound familiar to you because it sounds as though these are some of the things that you're doing. So first we signed up as a team in the Emerge cohort training. So Emerge, the Interfaith Movement for Immigrant Justice, is a coalition of about 140 congregations of different faiths, a lot of UCC churches, but also synagogues and Quakers and Buddhists and people of many faiths. So we went through a 6-month training, a team of 7 of us, and we started engaging in some of the activities organized through Emerge, including monthly vigils at ICE, which none of us knew where ICE was, or even that it was ICE right there on McAdam, very close, on my daily commute back and forth to work. We did Bible study, sermons, worship. We hosted a showing of Borders and Identity, which was a talk by Jose Antonio Vargas, and had a community discussion afterwards. We invited the community in. We had personal testimony in worship. We joined in with other faith communities in April of 2018 to protest the use of the 4-county jail for detaining people who were underdocumented, because the jail was not built to provide long-term housing, detention for people. It was built for very short-term stay for prisoners. So in April, May of 2018, we drafted our statement. We held Q&A sessions in our congregation, and then we voted to become immigrant welcoming on June 10th of last year. So our statement, which we've posted, I think we posted everybody's statement. Our statement was borrowed heavily from the statements of other congregations, and I'll just read you a short portion of it. As members and friends of Lake Oswego United Church of Christ, we are called by God to work to create a world where there are no longer strangers, responding in word and action whenever lives are made vulnerable or injustice occurs. In these days, we are moved by our faith and consciences to stand together with immigrants and their families. This requires that we build relationships across barriers, educate ourselves, advocate for human rights, and accompany our immigrant neighbors in times of need. So what's happened since we made that declaration on June 10th? Well, very quickly, the publicity about child separation and inhuman conditions, cage-like holding, came out, and people were like, I had no idea. I'm so glad that we did this. We launched into the campaign against Measure 105, which was an attempt to overturn our state's sanctuary law. Every Sunday, we took our signs down to the front of the church and we waved them on the road, staging a mini demonstration in front of our building. And not because of that, but because of the efforts of many, this measure went down 2 to 1 in November. In the teen class, we studied welcoming the stranger and immigration policy. In April, we joined through Emerge with other congregations in Advocacy Day in Salem. So for those of you who track some of these laws, the ones that we were specifically advocating for was the driver's license bill, because that was the greatest need expressed by the immigrant community. Expanded case management for refugees to ensure greater chance of success, to strengthen the language of the hate crimes bill, and also universal legal representation for those facing deportation, and these passed. During Lent of this year, we formed a small group discussion around our path forward as an immigrant welcoming congregation. And we essentially confirmed our three-legged approach based on what we've been doing in anti-racism work. One, to share stories and testimony, because that's how that touches the heart. Two, education and study, book group discussions and so forth. And three, taking action as organized through Emerge. And I believe the next thing we'll be involved in is observing at the courts in Clackamas County. So whenever I think of discernment, I think of the parable of the Good Samaritan. And it just happened last week that our guest preacher preached on the parable of the Good Samaritan. I asked him for a copy of his sermon, and unfortunately he didn't send it to me. So in preparing for today, I listened to the sermon, a version of a sermon that Martin Luther King gave on this favorite parable. He apparently preached many times on this. So I'm just going to give you an excerpt. I'm going to tell you what my imagination tells me. This is about what happened on that road. It's possible that those men, the priest and the Levite, were afraid. You see, the Jericho road is a dangerous road. And he goes on to say, and you know, it's possible the priest and the Levite looked over that man on the ground and wondered if the robbers were still around. Or it's possible they felt the man on the ground was merely faking, and he was acting like he had been robbed and hurt in order to seize them over there, lure them there for quick and easy seizure. And so the first question the priest asked, the first question the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But then the Good Samaritan came by and he reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? So Bruce and I have talked to you about where our respective congregations are on this journey. It's still early days. I have grown to appreciate, we at Liga Oswego have grown to appreciate the title of the materials from the National UCC what it means to say the journey is made by walking, as we continue to learn by doing. We have the same destination, but for each congregation, the commitment and living into your commitment to be an immigrant welcoming congregation will be different. Cedar Hills and Hillsborough, as Bruce alluded to, every Monday morning you can find them outside of the Washington County Courthouse protesting and observing. Congregations on the southern border, such as the one that Bruce mentioned, will look different from those of us in the north, at least for now. We're early in our journey, but the path ahead is getting clearer. Again, as Bruce alluded to, we may be called to action. I heard of one congregation recently, which included members who were lawyers, judges, and law enforcement. They worked through their discernment within the congregation, and decided that their path was to offer a legal clinic. The members of the law community were concerned that they were breaking the law, and they decided what they could do, what they could offer to the community, which is very important, was to offer a legal clinic to help immigrants facing deportation and family separation. So when your service opened, it felt just like home to me. In my congregation, we open with, no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. Friends, the good news is we don't have to journey alone. Should your congregation commit to being immigrant welcoming, you would be so welcome to journey with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce and Dawn, for sharing your stories, and may we journey together, walk together, but it's so important to share our stories with one another. And now, let us bring forth our tithes and our offerings this time.
Caring just one, you have created us in your likeness. We are all part of your holy family.
We commit ourselves to welcome the stranger in our midst, not only because we were once strangers, but because we are kin.
Just one, you invite us to offer hospitality because that is where we can find you, where we can find ourselves entertaining angels.
We commit ourselves to opening our hearts to this reality and basing our social justice work on this principle of divine equality.
Caring just one, you have asked us to read the landscape of our fears, the terrain of other people's sorrow, and turn our borders into bridges of compassion.
We commit ourselves to not live in fear and work toward the creation of humane borders that acknowledge that no human being is illegal for seeking the right to work and feed their family.
Caring just one, you have asked us to stand up to the powers and principalities that destroy human dignity.
We commit ourselves to creating a fair immigration system that recognizes immigrants' full humanity and eliminates barriers to their full participation in our society.
Caring just one, you have asked us to create just laws for all of your people.
We commit ourselves to voting no to punitive legislation that deprives immigrants of due process or civil rights, and yes to laws that protect and ensure these rights.
Just one, you have created this world and all that is in it and all that is good.
We commit ourselves to its preservation through changing our lifestyles based on limitless consumption and thus limitless exploitation of others. The caring and just one has prepared us to be living sanctuaries for love and justice. May we cross all the boundaries that separate us from our own true self and from others. May we know the joy and the suffering of interconnectedness. May we have the wisdom and courage to say no to unjust laws that deprive people of their dignity and rights. May our solidarity with immigrants be a transforming power in the world. May we work together to restore and rebuild our beloved communities. Amen.
Now we come to a time in our service where we share our joys and our sorrows and whatever you'd like to share. That's nobody? Sharon.
I'd like to lift up gratitude for our guests today. Thank you very much. And for the work of the Immigrant Welcoming Core team and for the ability for us to continue to discern how to move forward.
Thank you. Sharon asked for gratitude for our guests today and for the work of our Immigrant Core welcoming group that we might move forward. God of love,
We thank you for your presence.
any others? Carrie.
I have a prayer of gratitude also for all the people that make Camp Adams work. We went and picked up Annie from a wonderful week that she had last week, and I just have such great memories when I was a camper there, and I'm so grateful that that is something that continues and is going really strong this year as well.
Great. Carrie asked for prayers of gratitude for Camp Adams and the wonderful experience that Annie had and that Carrie remembers her having in her youth. God of love,
We thank you for your presence.
any others? Yes.
Okay,
Diana?
I'm offering prayers of peace and what kind of, and guidance to what kind of action is needed in our little street, Parkrose Street, Dead End Street. As the community, people calling themselves scrappers, are moving, trying to get their vehicles started and moving, they don't know where. I pray there'll be a location for them to meet and exchange recycled and maybe, the truth be, some stolen goods, but it's a business, and it's a way homeless people come and get some money from bringing things. It's part of our new life with tents along the freeways and people who are working very hard to try to make a living. There's also people doing drugs there, and it's not neat, it's not clean, it's not pretty when you live there and you're going home at 9:30 at night and people's doors are open and you have to wait till they close their doors and get out of the street. It's just like the real world today, and I just pray for these people that they'll have a place. Not in a residential area, but somewhere where they can gather and have their community and make a living.
Diana asked for several prayers
That's
for
right.
people that are homeless or trying to find work or find a place to live, and just in general, prayers for all of them that we might be able to find some solutions for them to be able to make a living and have accommodations that we're used to, and so that they can have a better life. God of love, we thank you for your presence. Any others? Yes, Don.
I think we could ask for prayers for this family that is seeking a sponsor, that we find that and together provide the support that they need for us all.
Don is asking for prayers for the family coming from Arizona, is it? So the mother and her 3 children, that they can find a place to live here and have the same freedoms and things that we so enjoy in our lives. God of love,
We thank you for your presence.
let us pray. Gracious and loving God, you've heard our prayers of gratitude, you've heard our prayers for peace and for help to people and groups of people. Please let us open our hearts to find solutions to some of the problems, and not only open our hearts, but open our arms and be more welcoming to those in need. We too have so much, and let us learn to share. In your many beautiful names we pray. Amen. Join me in this prayer. Abba God, help us to honor your name. Come and set up your kingdom. Give us each day the food we need. Forgive our sins as we forgive everyone who has done wrong to us. And keep us from being tempted. Amen. And our peace moment, we invite Sharon back up. There he is.
Yeah, if you just wait, we should be able to click on that.
Okay.
All right. So the peace moment is a clip of the leading call by Jim Mose, who's been the executive minister of global engagement for the National Church. for the past 8 years. Prior to that, he was the pastor at the United Church of Christ in Bismarck, North Dakota. He's a farm kid from North Dakota, and I've seen the place that he grew up. You can see the end of the world from there. You can. Part of his responsibility included global ministries, the partnership between the UCC and the disciples. And here's what he said to his co-workers at the recent meeting of the General Synod.
Programs are important. Relationships are everything. Jesus did not lay out a programmatic roadmap for us. He laid out the way of relationship, to love God and to love one another. Programs don't precede that, they flow from that. They are important. We are called to lead them. But if we try to build our programmatic life apart from relationships of mutuality, of trust, of listening, we are doomed to failure. But if we build the kind of relationships that Christ calls us to, then we can move the world.
Thank you, Sharon. There are announcements on the back of our bulletin. Pastor Don will be back in the office on Wednesday. And Kim, do you have an announcement on our school supply drive?
Well, yes, I do.
Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. So beautiful to see those windows up there. Oh my gosh. So the school drive, or supply drive, is put on by Mission and Outreach, and we take all of the donations and take them to Snowcap, where they're given to children to put it in their backpacks, and then they can go happily off to school with a few things that are theirs. I was sitting there and I was thinking about it. You know, I work over at Russell, I'm in the library, and when I can get out of the library and I head down the hall, the kids are constantly, they're under a lot of pressure and they're doing a lot of academic activities. But when they get to take a break and they get to pull out their watercolors, colored pencils, and crayons, they are amazing. I can't even tell you. In fact, I'm going to take pictures. I'm going to take pictures and I'm going to bring those pictures in here and show you on Martin Luther King Day how they, first and second graders, can do portraits of Martin Luther King that will blow you away. So, and the trees and just everything. So anyway, I kind of was getting excited back there thinking about just the art supplies and what that does for the kids when they get to break from their activities, their academic activities, and be able to become creative. So anyway, next week is the last week we're collecting, and then we'll be taking the supplies, correct? Yeah. So thank you so much for bringing them in last week and this week, but we still have a big basket and everything's on sale. So. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Back taped on the window is a list of those supplies that are needed, and it's also in the Friday update, and it will be in the crier, the August crier as well. So take a look and see what you can help supply Snowcap with. Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
And this will also be in the crier too. On Sunday, August 11th, instead of our regular council meeting, in the Mariners Room, we will be showing a short video and have some handouts of some of the things that we learned at the training. There were 5 of us that attended that training the end of June on safety and security of our faith-based congregations. So everyone is invited to come and learn what we're trying to share with you. So to keep everybody safe and our property safe. So, and I have one other announcement. We need someone to host the coffee time on Sunday, August 11th. If you could do that, if you will sign up in the kitchen, that would be helpful. And if you're able to bring any food to share, that would be nice too. So it's always nice to have a little cup of coffee and have some little treats after. And it's a time for also community sharing. Any other announcements? Okay. If not, stand as you're able, and with our last closing song, we are marching the light of God. As our worship concludes and our service continues, remember, we just didn't go to church.
We are the church.
Go forth and spread our love and welcoming presence to all.